Okay, we are good, I presume. We are live. We are just making sure everything is all good at this point in time. I assume people can hear me. If they can't, that would be rather unfortunate. Let me just make sure we have our webcam working well. Everything all good? Already have a viewer? Wow, okay. Awesome. A lot to talk about this week. A lot to talk about. We are getting into playoffs, and this is just a brief, not the proper show, but obviously the Super Bowl is going on right this second, but I have a feeling that really isn't a problem when it comes to viewership, considering the fact that A, the Saints aren't in it, and B, the game is not exactly the most entertaining in the world right this second. I'm a fan of defensive football. Not many people are. So a 3-0 game in the third quarter isn't very popular, generally speaking. That is just a little bit of talking beforehand. Gonna wait a couple of minutes just for people to see it and potentially come to watch in the first couple of minutes. Hello to everyone who's here already. Just gonna wait for a couple of minutes. Not too long. To whoever it is, hope you're enjoying your week. You can't hear me just fine, right? Like, that's not a problem? I hope that's not a problem. I think everything's set up good. If it's not, then I will have to try this again, but hopefully everything's okay. I can't really check it at this point. I think I've given people enough time. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Terrier Talk. This is a very interesting week, a very big week. Currently, the Super Bowl is going on. Probably not a problem for potential viewers. Obviously, it would have if the Saints had won. But Rams-Patriots game is not too enticing for South Louisiana fans of football. So I don't think it's a problem for scheduling. We have a big week for soccer. Outside of that, we're just going to go ahead and head right into last week's matches, last week's review. Of course, the biggest match from last week was the Vanderbilt 80 White boys soccer game. And I think you're going to hear the phrase fell inside the goal for the next 12 months in boys soccer, because that's all the players from this year are going to be thinking going into next year. For those who weren't there, here's the story. We were down 1-0. There was an early goal in the match about 20 minutes in, if I recall correctly. And Edie White, generally speaking, throughout the game, they had a little bit more structure to their play from what I had seen, and they took a goal early, and we were playing with time, basically. We were playing against time for the rest of the game. We get our best chance 2 minutes left in the game. We're inside 2 minutes. We get a solid, great shot on goal. A minute and 50 seconds left. Goalie catches it, falls down into the goal. Quote unquote, fell inside the goal. From our view, it looked like ball was inside the goalpost, should be 1-1, should be a draw. Instead, no goal was called. Edie White runs the last couple of minutes of the game out, wins the game, and goes on to, of course, win the district. They will be the 5 seed in the playoffs. I'll talk about that in a minute. And, of course, us, unfortunately, lose that huge rivalry game in, again, heartbreaking fashion, and we do not have a chance to get another shot at Edie White until potentially semifinals, and we'd have to go through a hellacious road to try to get there, including beating the number 1 overall seed in our class. I'll talk about the playoff week by week. I'm not going to go into our entire playoff road outside of what I just said. I'm just going to talk about our one game this week in the previews. That will be the main event, of course, us hosting North Vermilion. But as of right now, it's it's going to be a tough road. We're the 8 seed, 808's the 5 seed, and that game, it hurts. It was painful. I was able to come to it, but it was not. It was a good game. It was a really good game, but it hurt. It was painful. Moving on, we had outside of that, we only had basketball this past week. Both girls and boys basketball took on South Lafourche, traveling to South Lafourche on Tuesday. Excuse me. They traveled to Ellender on Friday. Starting with the girls, I'm just going to go girls and then boys. The girls started the week, of course, by taking on South Lafourche on Tuesday. And we got off to another almost patented, at this point, slow start for the team. Excuse me. Sorry. We got off to another, like I said, almost patented slow start from the team. The defense even got off to a really slow start. We gave up 15 points in the first quarter, which is en route for, of course, a 60-point given up game, which I don't think we have done all season. I don't think we've given up. Maybe we've given up 60 points once, but we've only given up 50 points twice going into this game. We've only given up 40 points. We've given up 40 points in less than half of our games. This is a great defense, and we were not that great defense in the first quarter. We were down, I think, 15-4 at one point in the first quarter. At the end of the first quarter, excuse me. Now, with that being said, despite the fact that South Lafourche is a great team, we did end up fighting back in the second quarter, in the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. We got it back to about 6 or 8 in the fourth quarter before inevitably losing by 10. We ended up losing 51-41 at the end of the game. Moving on, we traveled to Ellender, and unlike what was almost a normal performance for us, struggling in the first quarter, fighting our way in the second, third, and fourth, we actually had a very explosive first quarter against Ellender. We traveled to Ellender. We came in with great momentum. At the end of the first quarter, we were up 12-11. Unfortunately, the rest of the game was not quite as promising for our Terriers. We fell back about 7 points every quarter afterwards, after the first quarter, for a total of a 22-point loss. It was not, it fell apart. It fell apart for us. It happens. Ellender's a very good team. We're just going to have to get back to it next Friday. Boys basketball had the same schedule, traveling to South Lafourche on Tuesday and traveling to Ellender on Friday. South Lafourche, I said it was an even matchup, and it was a very even matchup. But just like the girls on Friday, the boys on Tuesday had an uncharacteristically good start. We set our record for the most points in a first quarter this season with a 17, which would be en route for a 72-point game, something we have not done all season. Unfortunately, we were not able to, or excuse me, a 68-point game, which we have not done all season, which is something that we were not able to do, unfortunately. We were up 17-11 at the end of the first quarter. And something I noticed with the team, as I've seen most of our games this season, something I've noticed is that we don't have the experience playing ahead. We don't know what it feels like to be up by 6 points at the end of the first quarter. We're a team that's used to last season. We went 6-12 for our conference league. The season before that was not a very good season for our record. So this year we've had success, but we're not used to being ahead of a good team. South Lafourche is not a bad team. They are a decent team. We're not used to being ahead of a team like that 6 points, 8 points. It was 6 points at most, but multiple buckets. And with that, we don't have the experience and wherewithal to be able to slow the game down, slow down our sense of urgency, and play from ahead. We're just not used to playing from ahead. And with that, we sort of rushed in the second quarter. We gave up that 6-point lead in a heartbeat. We ended up down 8 in the second quarter, 26-18. They went on a 20-1 run in the second quarter. We didn't score a basket until 3.5 minutes into the quarter. And luckily with a great three-pointer from us in the final minute, we came back to be down only by 2 points at the end of the half. That's about where the game was for the rest of it. There was a lot of back and forth going on, but it was slugfest, basket, 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 basket. And by the end of it, we were still just down 2 points, down 3 points. And we found ourselves in that situation in the fourth quarter. 50 seconds left. Seth Ponsa has a shot to hit the three near the end of the game to tie it up, put us in a great situation, and goes into the basket, and it bounces in and out. And from that point, we didn't really have another good chance to try to tie the game, and we unfortunately lost 52-46. And it was... Now, there are a few takeaways from this game outside of just the score, outside of just what exactly happened. We have a bit of a crowd. South Lafourche had a crowd. This is South Lafourche. Of course they had a crowd. But we had people cheering for us, and that's great. I love that. I can't thank the fans enough for that. That's amazing. But the point is, we have it. And it showed in the first quarter. We were arguably almost as loud as that South Lafourche crowd hosting a Vanderbilt crowd was in the first quarter, and it showed with the score. If we had the composure, if we had the wherewithal to stay with that, to keep the momentum without rushing, it could have been a very different game. But the point stands, we have a good crowd coming to these games. And I think the program's on the upswing, which unfortunately was not shown nearly as well in the Ellender game the 3 days later, that Friday. Look, Ellender's the better team. I don't think I'm surprising anyone when I say that. They played like the better team. They were the better team. They won. That's not shocking news. But that being said, we didn't put in the effort in the second half that we really needed to. A very good effort statistic to look at in basketball is rebounds. We even despite the fact that we were down by, I think, 15 at the end of the half, we out-rebounded Ellender 12-9 in the first half. That shows that even if, maybe Ellender is bigger, faster, stronger than us. Maybe that is true. It showed that we were still putting in everything that we could to try to win that game. We were doing our best. We were improving as a team. And that did not show itself in the second half. That same rebounding statistic, we got out-rebounded in the second half 21-6. That's awful. And it shows. That could have been a 10-point game. That could have been a 15-point game. But instead we lost by 30. And that second half performance is something that we cannot see for the rest of the season. Even if we're down 10 against Assumption, we cannot see that. We have to fight like a team. We have to play as a team. And if we don't, we're not going to improve as a program. That's something I saw in the full game against South Lafourche. In the first half against Ellender, we're improving. But that second half is very concerning for the team. Like I said, we have a big game against Assumption this next Friday. It's our only game this week. And we have to go out there and play like a team. We have to. I'll get to that, more on that later. Moving on, we are just going to talk about the next week. Those were all the big results from last week. We actually went 0-5 in basketball and soccer as a varsity program last week, which is awful. And let's hope we can do a lot better, of course, this week. Starting off next week, we have the tennis team starts their season. The blue team, which, if I recall correctly, is the JV team, is going to begin the season. And I think that's pretty interesting. Usually you would think that the varsity team would be starting the season. I don't know the exact dynamic between the blue team and the gold team, but I thought that it was the gold team was the best players in the blue team was next. So having the equivalent, at the very least, of a JV team beginning the season as opposed to the varsity team, I think is very interesting. The blue team takes on HL Bourgeois on Tuesday and then Houma Christian on Wednesday. I don't really know much about the dynamic, I guess is the best way to put it, for tennis, for a lot of these other sports, for tennis, for bowling, for golf. I don't really know what it looks like. I don't know how good HL Bourgeois is. I don't know how good Houma Christian is. So it's really hard for me to talk about these games and give like an in-depth, legitimate preview. But Good luck to our tennis teams, of course. The gold team then on Friday takes on St. Thomas More. And I don't really know much about the tennis status quo, but this is St. Thomas More. They're probably pretty good. So it's probably a pretty important game in the realm of tennis. If I had to guess, I don't know 100%, but if I had to guess, it's probably a pretty important game for the world of tennis in Vanderbilt, right, for this week. So good luck to our tennis teams with the blue and the gold, and I hope to see victories from them. Cheer, they travel to nationals. On Wednesday, they leave for Orlando. Of course, I wish the best of luck to them. They've always had a great success in state and nationals, and I hope they have that same success this year. Bowling, of course, has matches on Monday, and Wednesday. And girls golf begins the season at Cypress Lakes. That is it for everything non-basketball or soccer. Moving on, we have basketball. Now, there's only one game for both boys and girls basketball this week, and that is the game against Assumption. We traveled to Assumption. We traveled to Raceland to take them on Friday night. I'll start with the boys because it's probably it's the matchup that there's less to talk about, I guess is the best way to put it, because Assumption matches up very similarly to Ellender. They're both powerhouses. They both have a bunch of tall guys, lanky, raw, great athletes. They're bigger, faster, stronger than us. Sorry. They're an incredibly talented team. They're a great team. It's going to be very similar to Ellender. But that also means the keys to the game are going to be very similar to the Ellender game. We have to score points. We have to control our possessions. Do not rush our possessions. And just try to keep it close the whole way through. Try to keep it close for as long as we can. And see if something can happen. It's possible. Who knows? Now, the girls, it's a bit more of an interesting matchup. There are a lot of interesting statistics, actually, with Assumption in the girls' matchup. So Assumption is 16-8. They're very highly rated in the class and in the state for girls' basketball. But for a team that's 16-8, which is, of course, a very strong record, their point differential is surprisingly average. They're only at plus 4.7 per game. They only win by an average of 4.7 points per game. And compare that to our 13-10 record, yet we average plus 6.5 points per game. We average almost 2 more points per game in victories than they do, despite winning a 10th fewer of our games. And so, because of that, looking at the numbers, you can tell they tend to lose by a lot, and they tend to only win close. So with that being said, I would be very surprised if this game was a blowout. Even if Assumption maybe is the better team, they don't tend to blow people out. I think we're the sort of team that is going to be able to fight with them. And there are some more numbers to look at that. They're only slightly better on the road than at home, which plays to our advantage. They only average a few more points than we do. It's 4.5, which is notable, but it's 47.5 to 43. The game's going to be in the 40s, roughly. My guess, it's going to be a game somewhat low scoring. It's going to be close the whole way through. It's going to be tight the whole way through. And I'm very eager to see who wins the game. That is it for boys and girls basketball. Let's move on to, of course, the big news for this week. Like I said, it was a big week for soccer, and soccer playoffs do begin. The girls host St. Michael the Archangel, and, for a 16 seed in soccer, in girls soccer, St. Michael the Archangel is actually pretty impressive. They're above 500, which I don't think we'll be able to say for the number 16 seed in boys or girls basketball this year. They're 8-6. In a couple of specific records, they're actually not very far behind us. They're 3-3 on the road compared to our surprisingly marginal 3-2 at home. You'd think it'd be stronger than that. We've only played 5 home games, and we've only won 3 of them, which I think is interesting. And they have the same record. They have the same record against common opponents, which is a statistic you need to take with a grain of salt. They're only 1-0. We're only 1-0, and we beat Parkview Baptist by a lot more than they did. It was 4-0 compared to their 2-1 victory. So with that being said, they have a lot of strong statistics for a 16 seed, but they average a whole goal fewer than us. They average about 2 goals per game. We average about 3. Despite being above 500, they give up more goals than they score. They give up 2.3 goals per game compared to only scoring about 2 goals per game, compared to our extremely terrifying, monstrous 0.83 goals per game given up at this point in the season. So with all that being said, it'll probably be a relatively straightforward victory for us. I think we're going to come through a little bit more resistance than we may have thought at going into the game. I think it'll be a little bit closer than maybe people are going to say it's going to be. But I think we still have it's probably going to be a win. I still think we have a very, very good chance to win this game. I would still heavily favor us. And then, of course, we get to the main event, the biggest game of the week, the most interesting game of the week, the playoff game, boys soccer hosting North Vermilion. And this is easily the most even matchup there is all week. I would say that girls basketball versus Assumption is also rather even, but I think this is a little bit more interesting at the very least of a matchup, just because it is, of course, a playoff game. It's the 8 seed versus the 9 seed. So it's supposed to be very close, and it is very close. I think, again, looking at the statistics, looking at the numbers, where the seedings are is very surprising to me. This North Vermilion High School team is extremely scary. They're a scoring powerhouse. They average almost 4 goals a game, 3.85 goals per game. Compare that to our relatively measly. I mean, 2.6 goals per game is not bad, but it's not 3.85. It's not, I mean, that's an extremely impressive statistic. And they don't slouch on defense either. 1.6 goals per game given up compared to our 1.38. That's somewhat similar. That's marginally similar. And it's extremely impressive looking at those numbers for them. Our only common opponent is E.D. White, where they only suffered 1 heartbreaking loss compared to our 2 heartbreaking losses to E.D. White. So I guess they're a little lucky on that end. They have a much better record, both away and in general, compared to both our home records and just normal records. We are slightly below 500, 9, 10, and 2, if I recall correctly. They are 13 and 5 and 4, I think. 13, 5, and 4, if I recall correctly. If I recall correctly, excuse me. So, with that being said, looking at those numbers, you would think that they would be the team that's favored. You would think that they would be a lot higher seeded than they are. But what that means is that their power points have to be a lot lower than their record might show, which means that they're not playing very good teams. Their strength of schedule is probably abhorrent compared to ours. We can look at that E.D. White game. We can look at that against common opponent playing E.D. White. We're probably very similar teams. We played E.D. White very similarly that they did. E.D. White's defense shut them down and showed that their offense is not unstoppable. So I think it's a very even matchup. I can't wait to see it. I will be there. I will unfortunately not be at the girls' soccer game. I will, however, be at the boys' soccer game. So I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to watch it. I am very excited to see it. I think the boys have a great chance of winning. I think it's a very even matchup, but I think it'll be a great game. So good luck to our Terriers, of course, and I hope to see a victory. That will conclude episode 5 of Terrier Talk. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. See ya.